Hello and welcome to another episode of the Project Purple podcast. I'm Dino, founder and CEO of Project Purple. And we have an exciting interview coming up with a very special guest after a few quick updates. And I sincerely mean that. I know I say that a lot of very special guests, but this one is special for me and special for our community today. We'll get to that in a second here. Since 2010, we've contributed over $3 million and counting to pancreatic cancer research efforts. We've also allocated over $1 million worth of aid to more than 1,300 patients and families through our patient aid programs. Your monthly or one-time gift can improve patients' lives through research and assistance programs. You can donate now at projectpurple.org. Pancreatic cancer does not rest, and neither will we. Your support is truly appreciated. If you're looking to get involved in one of our events, whether that means joining a run team, participating in a virtual run walk, group fitness, golf, or anything else you can think of, visit projectpurple.org/events to learn more. And without further ado, and I got to stand corrected. So all our guests are special. I've said this probably many times on the podcast. I have the best job in the world, and I just don't say that. I truly believe that, and I know it. I get to interact with some of the world's best clinicians, and we've had many of them here on the podcast, researchers, oncologists, surgeons, those folks I say on the front lines. I get to talk and meet with our participants that allow us to do all the great things we do. And we've had some of them on our podcast. We brought our staff on, the folks that are helping us to do the things that we're doing. But I also get to meet so many wonderful people that are going through this journey or have a story and been touched by pancreatic cancer. And they're all really, really special. But today, I'm going to preface this, Sam, and try not to get emotional. I know you're going to tell your story here in a second, but I'm bringing Sam Constantino onto the Project Purple podcast. And I never asked you to be on the podcast. You came to me because of our relationship, which hopefully we'll go. I don't want to give away. I don't want to speak for you, and I don't want to go down that road of sharing your background, which we're going to do here in a second. You're going to be able to share your background with our audience listening and watching. But you came to me and said, "Hey, I want to be on the podcast. When are you going to bring me onto the podcast?" And you know, just sharing that story, hopefully for the audience that is hearing this for the first time, could tell like the relationship we have here. And so that's why I say this is special, because again, not to speak for you, and I don't want to tell your story, but we met really early, man. And I was in Italy when you called me saying, "Hey, I just got diagnosed." And, you know, so I in a way, like I haven't been there with you, but I've been very close to you and been involved and gotten to meet your family, your kids, your wife, friends, siblings. So this to me is very special. So again, I want to hand it off. You know, this is really special for me to have such a special person come to the podcast. And I got to be honest, Sam, I'm glad you asked to come on, because I think it would have been very difficult because of our relationship, if that makes sense, to ask you to come on. Because I don't want to put you in that situation where, you know, we're like family, and this, and to put you in an awkward position that, yes, you had to do it, or no, you couldn't do it.
Well, I'm full disclosure, I'm not a real easy person to deal with. So I know that. And I'm also very emotional. So if I happen to get teary during this, it's not in sad times, it's happiness. And then I think you conveyed the message very, very well, and how we met. And, you know, I don't pull any punches. The fact that you're Italian really flung me to you. And I said, okay, this guy's an Italian guy that dropped everything for his dad. Family's important, started this thing. And then it was just an immediate bond in my mind, whether we spent a lot of time together, saw each other or not. I knew that we were the same type of person. And typically I'm not really interested in group organizations to help each other. And that doesn't sound good, but yours, and it's because I feel like I got to do things on my own. But as you're aware, it took me a little while to really warm up to the idea of considering myself a survivor and how I could possibly help other people. And so I'm very much comfortable with that scenario now. And that's why I reached out to you. So to hopefully I can help others. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to turn it back over to you. So as is customary on the podcast, that first segment is always your opportunity, kind of share your story, as we say, your journey, whatever you want to call it, with our audience. I think we were joking before we hit record here. Hopefully more than our friends and family, your friends and family, our colleagues here will tune in. But, those people know your journey. I know you've had a great, again, from this relationship that we have, I've just seen your friends and family really rally around you. And hopefully we'll get into it, just what happened, a couple of weeks back. But even before that, before all that started, family's been such a big part of you and your wife and what you guys have built. But for our audience that don't know who Sam Constantino is, where should we start?
Where should we start? The most important thing in my life is my family. I wouldn't be here today without their support and love. But from that, I wouldn't have my family without God. I'm very, very blessed. And that's always the first part. But I lived a life that I think I was a pretty good person. We raised a family together, my wife and I, 4 children. And I was doing a lot of fitness activities my whole life. I was doing charity events for Leukemia Society, for Lance Armstrong group, everyone. I never really knew why I was doing those things. I had, my father had leukemia, so I did it. But then I continued on, and I thought I was invincible. I ran several marathons. I'd done ultra marathons. I did fitness program competitions, and then one day I got a stomach ache, and it was about 2 weeks after I did it. Coincidentally, I put this shirt on today, not even thinking. It was about 2 weeks after I ran this marathon, the Green Marathon in New England. With my 2 daughters. It was their first marathon, and it was going to be my last. As of right now, it still has been my last, but we're going to change that. So long story short, I had some stomach pain, and we thought it was ulcers. We went through the whole gamut. I don't really like to get into the medical detail part of it because, A, I'm not that educated in it, and I try purposefully not to be that educated in it because it only scares me. I let my wife deal with the details and my doctors, and I focus on positivity and going forward and how I feel each day. And so I was diagnosed on November 3rd of 2022 with stage 4 pancreatic cancer that had moved into my liver and into my abdominal wall peritoneum. And at the same time, my father also was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and he had a grapefruit-sized tumor, and it was too late. He was too old to really do much with chemo, and so I lost him 18 days. Boy, I didn't think I'd get sad about this. 18 days after I was diagnosed. So that was interesting because I actually did his eulogy knowing what I had. And it was tough. Honestly, 2 years after his passing, I haven't really been able to mourn because I got things I got to worry about with my own family. But I'm getting to it. So we're going to cheer this thing up. I'm going to wipe away my tears, and you're going to ask me questions that are more cheerful, because honestly, and I say this 100% sincerely, I wish I got this disease without the death sentence 25 years ago, because it opened my eyes to what's important in life. And the last 21 months that I've been dealing with this, or knowing that I had it, because I'm a firm believer that I've been walking around with cancer for 7 to 10 years. You don't wake up one day with stage 4. Something had to develop ahead of time. But these 21 months that I've been around since diagnosis have been some of the best days of my life. It's because it opened my eyes. And when we learned about this, my wife and I, we focused on 5 pillars, and we've stuck to those pillars all along. And they were real simple. They were God and our faith. That was number 1. Number 2 was love, family, positivity. I'm going to get these wrong. Number three was keep doing what I was doing nutrition and fitness wise, because I'm a firm believer that had I not been in pretty good shape going into this, I might not have fared as well as I've fared to date. The first obvious reaction when you get something like this, when you're in pretty good shape, is, for me, how could this possibly happen? All these other people are living lives that are less healthy, and I'm the one who gets this. And then if you want to spiral downward, you keep feeling bad for yourself. Or you say, hey, maybe if I wasn't in such good shape, I wouldn't be doing so well. Now, I don't know if there's truth to that or not, but that's what I believe. And that's what's powered me forward. And then obviously medical and chemo and treatment is a big part of this. I've had great doctors along the way, locally and out of state, have been very helpful. And then, I do a lot of meditation now, and I do positive mind over matter meditation with a gentleman named Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I'm a huge fan. Again, it seems like I'm biased because he also has an Italian last name, but I'm actually going to be attending an event of his with my wife the week of August 12th, which I'm very excited about. And so here we are today. That's my story. There's a lot more detail in between there. A lot of good things have happened. And honestly, I feel like one of the luckiest guys in the world. I really do.
So I just want to, so you're still in treatment, right? So just we won't go deep into the medical stuff, but you're still active in treatment in terms of your chemo regimen and what you're doing and everything. So just for our audience knowing that that's still going on and you're
right.
still.
Yeah. So I was in treatment from December of 2022 until March of 2023. No, I did that wrong. Did I do that wrong? Yeah, it's 24. Okay, till March of 2023. In April, I had this fantasy that I was going to go and have an operation, and I went down to Hopkins to have the operation. And when they got into my stomach to do the operation, they realized that it had spread too much to do, so they pulled out and they didn't do anything. However, I was in remission, I guess, at that point, and everyone was comfortable enough where I was not in treatment. So all last summer until about the fall, I was fine. I was doing everything I do, and it came back in the fall. And we started on some other, the same regimen of FOLFIRINOX. And then by February, it was just beating me up too much. I just couldn't do it anymore. Mm-hmm. And there's an interesting segue there, because I think you really need to listen to your body through this. And it's really important. And an example of that is I was starting to lose weight, a lot of weight and muscle mass. And I lost like 20, 25 pounds. And my doctor said, well, this is what cancer does to you. And I said, well, I understand that, but I don't believe that that's what's happening to me. I said, what's happening to me is that this particular treatment, while it worked very well at the beginning, it doesn't allow me to eat. I have no appetite. It beats me up so bad that I can't work out. And anybody that works out knows that that creates an appetite. And you start to lose muscle and you start to lose weight. I said, if we can change up this treatment, if there's something else I could do, I'm very confident that that'll all come back. And so around March of this year, we moved off of fulferinox and moved on to Abraxane and gemcitabine. That's about the level of detail that I know. And it's been very, very good to me, outside of the fact that I now am completely bald, but I'll take it. I'd rather be bald and alive than dead with a lot of hair, is what I like to say. And so here we are. I've gained back 20, 25 pounds. I put on muscle. My arms are still bigger than Dino's. So, we're coming back. And here we are. And I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I mean, it's just positivity and listen to your body and love everybody and be happy. That's what I do.
It's awesome. I got a question right out of the gate here. And again, and knowing you and being involved, this has been, to say the least, like a roller coaster. Because I remember the first conversation we had. I remember one of the other conversations, I think you dealt with like some fluid retention early on. Remember those days? Oh. Knowing what I know, which is a little unfair to the audience, but good for asking questions here. Like, how have you dealt with that? Like the roller coaster ride, like, because I know we've talked nonstop, right? Like one day you're doing really well, and then the next day you have these setbacks. But Sam, man, you're like the Energizer Bunny in terms of energy and being able to bounce back from these setbacks. Do you look back? I know you gave those 5 pillars, but can you look back here? And hindsight's always 2020. So this is a little bit of a loaded question. I ask a lot of loaded questions, by the way.
Yeah, it's fine.
Like, can you look back and like maybe like pinpoint like certain things or strategies, or maybe it's those 5 pillars that, have always kind of been there for you when you've had kind of these setbacks during that time?
Yeah, it's a combination of those 5 pillars, but I would tell you primarily for me, it's what's really brought me back to my faith. It's relying on God and trusting that everything's going to be okay, but you got to do your part too. You can't quit. You can't feel bad for yourself. And you have to look around your environment and your family and your friends and say, hey, I've been preaching for 30 years, 40 years about grit and teaching my kids and toughness and not giving up and not quitting. And what kind of person would I be remembered as if I then turned around and did that? And so much of it was out of my control that I didn't have any other option but then to rely so much and trust in God. And every time I run into a challenge like that, because there's going to be more, that's what I do. And then in conjunction with that, I've really become a true believer in manifesting outcomes. I've learned from Dr. Joe the concept of allowing myself to feel the emotion and the greatness of success without without experiencing it yet, but knowing it's coming. And if you believe that you're going to cross the finish line when you had no right running a 15K 2 weeks ago, and you put into your brain how good of a feeling it's going to be when they tell me I'm cancer free, when they tell me you cross the finish line, when they tell me I'm going to be at my kids' weddings, and you start to feel that, it becomes you and you manifest it. And that's how I go forward every day. Every day. As long as I wake up, I got a shot. That's how I feel.
So powerful. I heard this say, I did some corporate training years ago before, when I had my own insurance brokerage. It was actually right at the start. It's kind of one of the things that inspired me to start Project Purple. Well, there were many things, right? And my dad was a big motivation for that. But I was going through this personal coaching training, and this trainer was like one of Tony Robbins' like lead trainers, and then he started his own thing. You know, if anyone's ever done Tony Robbins training, probably will know this. But also at the time, you know, this is going back almost 15, 20 years ago. Like Tony Robbins was expensive. Like I think it was like $10,000 to go to one of his seminars. This guy was a lot cheaper. So, but you know, I think his strategy was more of like, you know, in any sales position, right? Anything you do, right? It's all about the numbers, right? It's about mass, you know, trying to maximize your time and your spend. So, you know, these guys were doing it a little bit different, doing it online before online was really a thing, which was cool. But so the point of here is though, they always used to say this term about like how our conscious drives like a lot of our decisions, right? Like we just don't, we don't think about like putting on our pants in the morning, but you always go right to left, right? And that conscious mind is driven by the unconscious, right? But if you can train that unconscious to change, right? Like all these things we do every day, right? So I've always, since that time, always been really fascinated about like the unconscious mind. And I've said this on the podcast, like our mind, our brains are like, I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert. I think it's like we use like 2% of our brain, right? I think is like I don't know if that's the exact number, but it's really, really low, right? And I have always, and this is again one of the inspirations for me, but in the same vein here is like it amazes me like what we can make our mind do, right? Like whether that, and I relate a lot to physical feats just because of my upbringing and being involved in athletics. Like it was always like amazing to me to see, like I was a big hooper, right? Like these guys playing at such a high level, but not having like the athleticism, not having the size or, you know, just what like a typical like NBA player, you know, but the guys like Muggsy Bogues.
I was just going to say Muggsy Bogues.
5'3", right? If that.
Spud
right?
Webb.
Yeah, Spud Webb, right? Like these guys that just like, but they had that. And even, you know, we can go down the line with Jordan, like, right? Like he wasn't the most gifted athlete athletically. Like he had a lot of athletic talent, don't get me wrong, but his mental aspect was just he was so superior mentally than 99.9%, right? And so you look, and I know we look at sports because you probably see that, but then if you really deep dive, you look into business or you look into different sectors, right? And you see these people that are able to do these amazing things in a positive way most of the time because they have that ability to change that unconscious. Right. And to make that unconscious conscious in what you do and how you act and the things you do. So I am a firm believer in that. And it's just awesome to hear, Sam. With that, I've got a thing that here that I wrote down here as we talk through this. And again, knowing you and having the relationship we have, if you look back, hindsight being 2020, was there a point where, in the term I'm going to use is acceptance?
Yeah.
There's certain a bit of acceptance. I know early on that wasn't the case, but if we look back, like where was that maybe tipping point of that acceptance where this mind shift change occurred and these things started to really happen for you?
Probably when it came back in November. And that's when I realized that maybe I was doing all of that distance running training for 25 years because it was teaching me a lesson about life. And when you get
I just wrote that down. I don't think history of experience here. I wrote. So that was my next question, which you just nailed it.
So, when I was never a runner. 30 years ago, I ran to chase a basketball or to chase a baseball or football, catch a football. I realized I couldn't do that stuff anymore because I had a family and that was my priority. And so I became a runner and I ran a race, and I ran my first distance race ever was the Boilermaker in 1998. Had no right running that. And what I learned about that process, which then became my character, which was a marathoner, was you can't do anything in life, at least I can't, if I look at the whole pie all the time. If I say 26.2 miles, 50 miles, shit, that's horrible. Like, who's going to do that? So here's what you do. You take one piece of it at a time. 1 mile, mile 2. There's going to be a hill on this mile. Okay, that one's going to be harder. Now it's going to turn. Now you get a little downhill and it's going to be relaxing. But you just segment it out, and that has shaped my life and the way that I think. Distance running, and it comes into every part of my life. So that when I looked at the situation that I'm in, I got out of the woods, let's say, or I had an ability to come downhill. It was an easy run last summer because I didn't have chemo. I was supposedly in remission. And then November, the hill came. And I said, okay, this is my life. You know what? This is what's going to now happen. Whether I have 1 year or 10 years or 30 years left. And how do I deal with it? And I deal with the same way I deal with every race I ever ran. And that's putting your head down, moving forward, and having faith. And, on a lot of my long runs, I may have missed church a couple times because they were on Sundays, but I could tell you I didn't miss God, because when you're out there alone, I did a lot of praying. And, that's probably the biggest part of distance running that I miss right now because I can't do it yet. But listen to me, yet. I'm always thinking about the possibilities moving forward.
So you say you haven't done distance running yet, but 2 weeks ago you just ran a 15K, which most people, Sam, let's be honest, most people think like a 5K is distance running. I know when you and I talk about it, we think in those longer terms of like marathon, half marathon, but the average human being, which probably encompasses like 99.5% of the population, thinks a 5K is long distance. But you say to yourself, hey, I haven't done long distance running, but you clip off a 15K, which
yeah, I really appreciate the comments, but as a very competitive person, I would say I traveled a 15K. I would never say that I ran a 15K 2 weeks ago. And I think there is a little comedy to that story and how that happened, if you want to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go into it.
So,
because you weren't supposed to run though, right? Because I know the team told me, I got a message. Let's back this up for a second. We get into the Boilermaker. Sam is our upstate New York chapter president, by the way, if we haven't mentioned that yet. So this was the first year of Project Purple being an official charity partner of the Boilermaker. I think you guys had like 20 plus runners. I mean, you guys raised a ton of money for the cause, but I don't think you were supposed to run. And then I got a message from Vin, who runs our running team, he told me like on the DL, he's like, hey, Sam's looking for a singlet. And so we're doing something new this year. We implemented this like a couple months back where for our teams that we can't get out to physically see everyone, we print everyone's name on their singlets here in the office. So as we know, with all these races, like when you come through, instead of people saying, "Hey, Project Purple," they can say, "Hey, Sam," or whatever the name is, right? Which is really cool. But so I think your kids maybe got their singlets, and you were like, "Vin, where's my singlet?"
That's true. And so what happened was, you have to rewind to last year, end of Boilermaker. If you know anything about the Boilermaker, which I don't get commission for the Boilermaker, but it formed my life. It changed my family's life. We're all runners as a result of the Boilermaker. And last year at the party, the post-race party, which is put on by Saranac Brewery, and they do a fantastic job, and we all drink too much after a 15K. And last year I was able to run it and have a fun time with my wife. Because again, I was in remission. Anyway, my daughter decided to run, or decided, she saw these guys that were all running in Saranac cans, and they were these man-made cans. And so we're all drinking, and she asks if she can get in the can and dance. This is Gia. And she's dancing around, and the guys go, "Hey, we have 5 cans. We need a 6-pack. If we make a 6th can, would you run in it next year? The Boilermaker, the whole thing." And she says, "Yeah, of course I'll do it." So we get to now this year, and I had tried on several occasions, but as I mentioned, the chemo was brutal on me, FOLFIRINOX. And I thought I'd be able to run the 15K this year, and then I backed down because I couldn't really run. And then I said, you know what, I'll do the 5K. So I was in my brain going to do the 5K. Now I'm going out doing 1 and 2 mile runs, and even that hurt. And I'm like, I don't think I could do even a 5K. So my training was 2 miles. Now backwards to my daughter. Saturday before the Sunday race, we get the can delivered. And so it's in my driveway. I said, "What's the plan for getting it to the start?" She said, "Oh, I'm going to get on the bus, and I'll go to this." I said, "You think you're going to walk on a bus
with a can?
I said, "Not going to happen." So we had to borrow somebody's truck at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah, it's in the start.
We put the can in the truck. We drive down to the start of the Boilermaker. And I said, "All right, I'm going to drop you off with your boyfriend. I'm going to speed back to the start of the 5K, because the 5K is the last 5K of the 15K.
Yeah.
Find a parking spot. Boom, I'll go." I get down there. I'm looking at my watch. I said, "I'm not going to make it." And then all these thousands and thousands of people that I've experienced for the last 25 years. It's like Christmas in July for me. I'm getting so excited, and I'm standing there, and now my wife comes and my family comes, and they're all at the start line. And I said, "I think I'm just going to maybe run a mile, and I'll call you guys if I need a ride or something."
Yeah.
And my wife, God bless her, had been training really hard all spring. And I said, "Listen, I'm not going to worry you or affect your run. So please do not worry about me. I've done this for 30 years. I'm not going to kill myself on this." Boom, gun goes off. I run 1 mile. I thought, well, all right. And I walked then, and I thought, okay, I'm going to draw on everything I learned about running today to cross the finish line. When I can walk, when I can run down the hills and on the flats, when I have to walk uphill, but don't just dog walking. I mean, power walk up the hills, because what I had put in my brain is I'm not going to be the guy that comes in after the mat is torn up. And so they give you 2 hours and 30 minutes to run a 15K, which is 16-minute miles. And now, mind you, I will pat myself in the back. I used to run it in 61, 62, a little over an hour. Yeah. Now I'm fighting to get in under 2 hours and 30 minutes. So I just planned it all out and what I had to do. And I just kept going. And back to the manifestation, what kept me going was, how good am I going to feel? And how excited will I be when I cross that finish line? And I kept going. And I will tell you, I came in at 2 hours and 25 minutes, gun time. No, real time. Although the clock says 2:30, I started 5 minutes behind. And it was awesome. And I had that big crowd. And of course, I'm not a dummy. You're not going to cross the finish line walking. Everybody thinks I was running. I walked all the way to that point until they could see me. And then I was like, wow, this is great. But, things happen for a reason. I never used to believe in that comment, but I truly believe it more than ever. And I just trust in what's supposed to happen. And then I do my part. And so that's what happened. Here we are. I ran a 15K on 2 miles of training. Well, I traveled.
I love it. Well, you know what, Sam, I have someone asked me years ago, like, oh, you run the whole marathon? And I go, well, I don't know if you call that running. And honestly, and I'm not like putting shame to anyone or throwing shade to anyone, as they say, I guess. None of us are winning any money. And for those that are competing to win money, I guess they're running really fast. We're just trying to finish,
Right.
And that's something that I think I've shared this story before on the podcast. I don't know if I've ever shared it with you, but one of I've mentioned a couple inspirations here, but like one of my first, my first marathon experience was at the Boston Marathon in 2012, and I was undertrained. I never ran past 13 miles, and I got a spot 7 days before, and you do it, right? Like, you do it. If it's one of these things, you just do it. But I realized then, that wasn't even like a serious runner at the time, or serious runner sounds, I don't know. Like, I've never seen myself as like a runner, because I feel like running as we go into the Olympics are like those Olympians that can do like 100 in like under 10 seconds. Or, you got this kid now, this high school kid, Quincy, I forget his last name. He's setting these world records, and he's on the Olympic team. He does the 400 in like, 44 seconds or something crazy. That's running. Like, those guys moving that fast. And for those that have been at like we were in Chicago last year or 2 years ago, and the guy set the world record, and those guys were sprinting through at mile 13. The women's record was set in London. I was at mile 24. That lady was sprinting, like she was running. Everyone else, we're just trying to finish, man. And but that's something, like you set a goal, and regardless of like whether you sprint, whether you walk, whether you jog briskly, you finish. And that's
I always say this, Dino. In all the marathons that I've run, I've crossed helping people at just under the 6 hour limit. And I finished my own personal best, I think was a 3:18. And it didn't matter. I felt just as good at 5 hours and 58 minutes with my sister as I did by myself at 3:18. As a matter of fact, I felt better at the 5 hours and 58 minutes because I did it together with somebody. Yeah. And so you're right. It does, like, it's just about the journey and the experience and enjoying it. My brother-in-law always used to say to me, I think I'm better than the Kenyans because it took me 5 hours to run, and I bet they couldn't run for 5 straight hours.
Correct. Well,
very slow.
It's funny. I mean, you probably remember this, like Boston, what was it, like 2017 maybe, or 2018, when like it was the cold, rainy one that Des won, and then the Asian guy won, I forget his name, for the men, and Des Linden won for the women. And she popped into like a porta-john, and Shalane waited for her, or vice versa. She waited for Shalane. And, a lot of those elite runners dropped out because they're not used to grinding, but like so many people finish, right? And so, I know that's kind of like we're joking, but like it's true. Like, but getting back to this, I think like the experiences you have, and this is where I go back to like this mindset, Sam, right? And this vision, like you finished, and I think like people think like every journey that you do in a marathon and running, and this is like a great running analogy, right? Like, training, right? Like you go out on those runs, Like there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, there's going to be flats, there's going to be hills, right? There's going to be downhills. Like it's this up and down, this constant roller coaster, right? But everyone seems to think like it's this linear, right? Like you're running, it's linear, right? But now, if we take that analogy and use it in our experiences in life, right? I know you've been very successful in business. Similar, right? Like everyone thinks like when you're at the top, like everything's great, right? Like, oh, like Sam achieved this or so and so achieved this high accolade or this huge success, these huge sales numbers, but there's all the other stuff that no one sees, right?
Agreed.
But I always tend to say like the build through that and the journey through that, the tougher the journey, the more rewarding the finish line is.
Absolutely. Listen, you're gonna make fun of me about this, and my girls will definitely make fun of me. But I'm a girl dad, and so I grew up with my girls liking Miley Cyrus, and I still cry when I hear "The Climb" because that's a great song. It's absolutely dead on. It's all about the climb, without a doubt. And I think that's what you're saying, and I agree with it.
I want to shift here a bit and talk about faith. You've mentioned faith a lot. Let's break that down a little bit. And I got a couple questions related to that. First one is, again, I know you a little too much here, so I got to assume the audience doesn't know. Was faith something as you grew up as a child, with your family, something that you were like, did you go to church every week? Or, like something you and Maria, as you guys started to build a family, something that you always kind of were practicing?
So both my mom and dad were Roman Catholic, and I went to Roman Catholic high school, and that's where I met Marie when we were freshmen. And took me 2 years to convince her to date me. So we started dating when that's pretty much the time period it takes anybody to get to like me is 2 years.
Hey, we're on 2 years. So we're
see, it's really going to go up from here. Like I grew up very Catholic, very religious from a process standpoint, not from spiritual. And then I went to college, and I actually took a history of Christianity course that was so intriguing to me that you don't know this about me. I was a religion and classics major in college with a minor in business. And when that happened, my father pulled me aside and said, whoa, what are you doing? Like, are you going to be a TV evangelist? Like, what's the plan here? So really what that did, Dino, is it opened my mind to multiple religions. I studied not just Christianity, multiple religions, multiple philosophies of life, and different vehicles that people take to get to God, to get to a higher being. And then my life started with children, and we obviously brought them through all the traditional Catholic baptism, confirmation, all those things. And it became, again, more of a process for me than something that I felt inside. And I knew that I had a relationship with God, but not to the level that I do today. At the same time, I felt like I had so much going on in my life that I wasn't necessarily spiritual. And to be candid, I didn't feel like I needed it. I felt like I was Superman. I could do everything. If I just put my mind to it, I could do it. And the biggest sort of revelation that I've had has been that I'm not Superman. Nobody's Superman. And I need to put my faith in God and more faith in God. And I've done that. And certainly I feel like one of a million people, they get diagnosed with a terminal cancer, and now all of a sudden they're religious. Yeah, that happened to me, but I'm all in. I'm not just doing it because I'm afraid to die tomorrow. I'm no longer afraid to die. I think this side of the coin is not as good as the other side of the coin. I think either side that I'm on is going to be really good. And I would never felt that way until I really got deeper into my faith. And so now, feeling as good as I feel today, in the past, I would have said, okay, I did all the praying. I'm feeling good. I don't need to do that anymore. I am twice a day, prayer, meditation, and trying to live out that lifestyle the best that I can. And I hope that it's a noticeable change on the outside, because on the inside, I feel completely different.
Question just came up that you just said something. So you said, like, you raised your family, you brought up in that. And I'm not putting words in your mouth, but like, hey, so you stopped, you felt like superhuman, and then it's not like you just came back to God. But so like, so the question is though, Sam, do you think, you ever thought this, maybe you haven't, like that upbringing in that faith, that foundational piece, like you said, like, hey, like you thought you were Superman, but like, the question is, do you think like that faith, that foundation that you had has always been with you? Like the decisions, again, subconsciously, remember we talked about subconscious and conscious, like those subconscious things that you were ingrained or you were learned in that upbringing, in that faith, stay with you forever. Not just because you don't go to church every weekend, not thinking about it doesn't mean that it leaves you. So you ever thought about that? Like, because like, even like subconsciously, like the things that you were doing were still part of that faith that help you with that foundational piece.
I think about that regularly. It's always been, it's probably not the best analogy, but it's sort of like cancer. Maybe it was there, and then something, and in my opinion, some of the stress in my life activated this cancer inside of me. Yeah. And boom, it came out. Religion was always there in my life. It was always an important part. But God threw me several warning signs. I mean, we're just talking about cancer, Dino.
Yeah.
7 years ago, as you're aware, because we're friends, I was diagnosed with a bicuspid aortic valve, and I had to have an emergency open heart surgery to fix the valve.
Yeah.
I felt like God was saying, wake up.
Wake up, man.
Okay, so what do? I don't listen. I just overpower this thing, and I think I'm superhuman, and I do everything like my life is back to normal. And guess what happened? I was out chainsawing my yard, my landscaping one day, and I chainsawed my knee, and I got endocarditis, blood infection. I had 2 strokes, one eye looking that way, one eye looking that way. Another sign from God. Hey, wake up, boy. I got better, moving on in my life. And I feel like finally he said, listen, I can give you a real tough one this time. I'm going to throw you cancer at the highest level, the worst one, or one of the worst ones. And I went, okay, I need you. I can't do this one alone. And it opened my eyes. And that's why I say I wish I had my eyes opened in a tamer way. 25 years ago. Long answer to your question. I believe the foundation that I've had my entire life just got awakened in the last 21 months.
So staying on faith for one more minute here, or however long this takes. is there something go-to that you want to share? Like, is there a prayer or something that you just that's like your go-to mantra? I know you talk a lot about meditation, which we're going to get into here in a second, but I just want to kind of end this on faith. Like, is there some, I guess I have here strategies.
Yeah.
What's like your strategy for faith? Like, is there a routine? Is there something that you could share? Maybe there's someone listening. I think, and we say this often, this has been so powerful, Sam, to hear you say these things. And like, we know each other pretty well. And, some of this is the first time I'm hearing some of this stuff, but, hopefully the audience listening and watching, understands, like, you'll get this. Like, I'm not in your shoes, but if I'm ever in your shoes, I'm hearing this from someone who's had, who's looked down the barrel of a gun and is still finishing 15Ks over 2 years, almost 2 years later, doing this. So this is just so powerful. So back to strategies. Do you have strategies that you use when it comes to faith?
I do. And, it's just sort of like going back and forth because I at times I hate technology and social media. And then other times I go, you know what? If you use it the right way, it's really good. I think the first strategy for me is in the morning, I immediately wake up and thank God for waking up. And then I try to get alone with my coffee. And I'm like a walking advertisement. I swear I'm not getting any commission for this, but there's a fantastic app called Halo.
Halo, I got it. Yeah.
And I listen to the morning prayers with Halo every single morning, no pun intended, religiously. And that gets me starting my day before I get on email and get frustrated with texts and who I got to reply to and what I have to do for the day. I start with prayer in the morning, asking God to give me the power and strength to take on the day. And I use the Halo app for that. And then at night, before I go to bed, there's also a Halo nighttime piece where every night I listen to prayer and I pray before I go to sleep. And it puts me to sleep in a very peaceful manner. And then in between the day, the morning and the night, I'm now studying and going through many courses with Dr. Joe Dispenza on meditation. And so any opportunity I get, a break in my schedule, I'll listen to a meditation and I'll just, relax and veg out and think about how I want to change my life and just positivity. And I just, that's the course of my day. And probably the thing that's the most prevalent now than ever is gratitude. I have more gratitude for the simple things around me in life than ever. If I used to look out and see that tree and see a tree. Nah, who cares? Now I could stare at it for 5 minutes and be appreciated. It's crazy.
On that note, I noticed this the first time the minute we logged on. I know that you're not in your bedroom, but this is one of your children's bedroom. But the sign behind you, I don't know if you've noticed. I mean, talk about gratitude, right? Every day may not be good, but there's something good in every day.
Absolutely.
And that is a home run there. And so the irony that you bring up gratitude and the sign behind you is exactly what that is all about. And I think, Sam, those are just some powerful words, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. We talk about faith a lot on our podcasts when we have survivors. We like to call them superhumans, and you're in that group. And regardless, and I'll just leave this at faith, like regardless of whether it's Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Islam, whatever you believe in, faith-wise, is really, really important. Not to also, I'm not a priest. I don't pretend to be a priest. Um, I don't think also, just we'll say this, like, I don't think people have to go to church or go to wherever you go to pray. I think that's something that's very personal.
Yeah.
Like for me, um, faith has always been a part of my life because of my upbringing, which is very similar to yours, right? The Italian culture, like faith was a big part of Italian culture and still is, right? Like if you look and you go to Italy, I mean, there's every town has its own church, which is kind of foreign here in the United States to some degree. You can go through towns and maybe you don't see a church. But so yeah, and the churches were usually revered as like the center of the towns, and they're just like I enjoy going to a lot of churches um, all over the world. In certain parts of the world, it becomes more of like I went to I guess I'm going to beat up on the UK here. But when I was in London for the London Marathon this past year, I remember going to like St. Paul's Cathedral, which is beautiful, right? It's a beautiful cathedral. And like you had to pay to go on a tour, which to me, I think is kind of silly. They had a little small area where you can go light a candle and pray. But in some parts of the world, and I guess there are other parts, Italy's like that too. Like you can't just walk into some of the big cathedrals, but in some of the towns throughout the country, I mean, even here in the United States, some of the churches, regardless of, or places of worship, I should say, would probably be the best term, regardless of whether it's Catholic or what other religion it may be, become kind of like just beautiful, wonderful places to have this interaction with who you believe in God and that higher being. But yeah, faith is really, really important. And I think it's something that I have seen, again, from doing this podcast and interacting with so many superhumans, those that have done really well with this thing called pancreatic cancer, have had a really strong faith, regardless of who they believe in. But that is a big part of their life. So I appreciate you sharing that with our audience.
Yeah, I just want to touch on one other thing that you brought up, and something that I'm just ultra proud of. To the audience, Dino and I didn't think about this sign thing, and behind me, that just was spontaneous. But what I'm super proud of is that without us pushing, my children have now grasped a lot of the same mantras and concepts. I didn't tell my daughter Sophia to put that picture up there. I didn't realize it was up there. But I mean, I've seen it before, but it's fantastic. Yeah. And those kinds of things really make me happy and make me feel like, hey, maybe we're doing something right. So I'm very, very proud of that.
And as a parent, I can relate, Sam. And for those parents listening and watching, when you have those moments, right? Like parenting is probably the hardest thing in the world that, and I'm not trying to throw, right? There's no, like, and it's like trial by error most of the time, right? Like, and whatever worked for someone may not work for you, and given your situation and dynamics and all that. But it is the hardest job in the world, but it's also the most gratifying, right? And so, on that note, this is a good segue. I know I had this as a note here. Let's dive in. I mean, I know that's number 2 in your pillar here, the family. I know it's not been easy because us knowing each other well, not only for your wife but for your kids. I mean, you still have a daughter in high school. You have a wide range between your son, your daughters, and where they are in their lives. But I've seen, 2 of your daughters ran the New York City Marathon last year, and how euphoric that was for you and your wife. And there's this moment. I got to get emotional here. The moment we had in Brooklyn, and I don't think we've ever shared those photos, and I never will with the public because that's not fair to you and your wife. But there's that embrace after your second daughter goes through, and you guys hug, and how happy you guys were, and just to see, what that meant to you guys. But talk about the family. The girls have rallied. I know your son's been involved. I know it's a high. You just had all your sisters super involved, but let's talk a little bit about the support of the family here, and try not to get too emotional here, Sam.
Yeah, I'll try. It's been insanity. I mean, the level of support that I've received from my family and my friends who are like family has been just almost not fair, to the extent where I understand people having a challenge with this diagnosis, and I wish they all had the support that I have. So on that note, you can share anything of mine if it helps somebody else. We're an open book. That's beautiful if we can help other people. So with my family, we hit this like pretty much we hit everything straight up. When I got diagnosed, my daughter Gia was living in Rome, Italy, studying abroad. We had already had a trip planned. It was just going to be a fun Thanksgiving in Italy. And then I got diagnosed, and we didn't want anybody to know before my children knew. And so we went to Italy for 8 days, and I had the port already, so I had to hide the port. And every morning I woke up, I looked over at my wife and I said, "Let's wait another day. We're having fun." So I wake up day 2, let's wait another day. So finally by day, I think 5 or 6, we sat them all in our Airbnb in Rome, and we told them what the case was, what the situation was. And while parenting is hard, that was the hardest conversation I've ever had. Especially knowing, we actually didn't go to Italy until after my father passed. So the grandfather just passed of pancreatic cancer. And now we're telling him, hey, I've got it too. That was really hard. But I think because we have been very open and dealing with this straight up with them and not holding anything back, they see my joy, they see my pain, they see my every piece of this they've seen. Now, some people may say, "Nah, I'm not sure that's a good idea," but it's drawn us closer. Every one of my children, and clearly my wife, have participated in helping me get to where I'm at today, in one way or another. And then my sisters and my brother and my nieces and my nephews and my cousins and my friends, they're just all around. They're so supportive, to the point where I feel so good that when I see them, I don't want them to ask me. I'm like, thank you for your care and concern and empathy, but let's talk about the football game. Don't worry about me. I'm doing okay. So yeah, it's just been incredible. Hard, but I feel like when you just get it out there, tell them this is life, they've learned a lot from this. Life ain't easy, but it's fun and it's great if you have a positive attitude.
Powerful. Question for you here that we get often, and this is where it stems from. And I love how you brought it up. Like, hey, let's talk about football. A lot of times we get calls here at the office. Hey, my neighbor, my best friend, coworker, family member just got diagnosed. You don't have to name anyone. And I know this is probably again, this is a loaded question, and this is probably just knowing you going to be really hard for you to answer. But maybe just give some examples, if you just want to pick one, of something that your friends or family have done that have really meant the world to you during this time. because we get a lot of those questions like, hey, what should I do? Like everyone thinks, I think sometimes, Sam, that they got to like do something like super elaborate, or they got to do this, or they got to do that. I don't know where they get that information, but I always say, ask the person, like, so here we are, we have someone who's been, is there. Give the audience an example of maybe some things that have really meant the world to you, from friends, family, or whomever. And you don't have to name names. If you want, that's up to you.
Yeah, I'm so close with my friends and family that any story I'm going to bring up, they're going to know exactly.
So you got to be careful which story you bring up. Right?
So, I'm going to preface this by saying
we got 30 seconds here to give an example.
I'm not going to leave anybody out, but I will say some things that happened early on, and the people recognized that I just wanted to be treated as normal as possible. I've been a skier my whole life, a downhill skier, instructor, the whole 9 yards. And so when I was diagnosed in December or November, and then started chemo in December, that ski season was essentially going to be gone for me. And I have a very close childhood friend that skied with me my whole life. And even though I wasn't sure if I could take one run or 20 runs that day, he consistently invited me to go up to his place and ski. And I took advantage of it, and I took him up on it. And it was amazing. When you go through chemo, at least for me, I was freezing my ass off all the time between neuropathy and just being cold and not having any hair. I'm like, do I really want to be skiing right now? And this was during treatment. And I did. And we didn't talk about being sick, and he was patient with me. And, I rode up on the gondola, and I said, I'm going to take one run just to make sure I can still do this. And that's it. And then we skied the whole day. And so that one really jumps out at me. My wife, who I go to the gym with, 4 or 5 days a week in the morning, we still go and do those things and treat, I feel like a normal person. I'm doing the things that I do. My kids, even though they know, when I was training my daughters on long distance running, they always gave me a hard time because I would run backwards. And try to motivate them, like, come on. And then they'd be like, what is with that backwards? It's so annoying. So now my girls, when I try to go out and run a few miles, they turn around and run backwards. Come on, Dad, you can do it. So, there's so many things, and I'm leaving out people. I know it, and I apologize, but man, I could go on for a whole nother segment on the people that have all been so important to me, in this let's call it a race, in this race.
It's awesome. I mean, I know that's a hard question, but you answered it perfectly. And I think, it's a question. It's probably the most asked question that we get here. And I also, part of this podcast is to share, not only to bring awareness and share these great stories, but also, share useful information. Because I think a lot of times people think like, oh, I got to do something big. I got to do something grand. It doesn't need to be. It's just keep it normal.
You know how many times, I get invitations. I can't keep my schedule free. They all just want to go to lunch, go to dinner. Let's get together. And it's fantastic. So many friends and family that have done that for me. So
awesome. I got a couple questions left here for you.
Let me just say one more thing, Dino. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The other thing that I will say is that I truly have been blessed by my employer. And I'm not saying that because I need to keep my job or anything. It's a fact, right? They could have given up on me. And instead they went the opposite direction. They doubled down on me and gave me more responsibility, and more opportunity for growth, and have really given me something to do every day. And And when you feel valuable and you feel like you're participating in something like that, it again drives you forward. Like, I don't have time to think about my problems or my head hurts. I got to get the work done. And so that has been an integral part of my success.
Just wait 6 months and then they add more to your plate because of all the success you're having, and we'll see if that still feels the same.
Right.
Right? Be careful what you wish for. You brought up fitness a lot, and then again, we know each other pretty well. I know. I mean, I think you're very humble in describing your fitness before. I mean, you got into competitive like bodybuilding, which, like, for anyone listening, I mean, so you're laughing, and I say competitive. I mean, at the local level. But I had a really good friend growing up in high school. He got into bodybuilding like senior year in high school, and I remember, or no, we were home from college like freshman year. And I remember we went out, and he's bringing this Tupperware thing with him. What's going on here? And I'm like, Pete, doing? That's my dinner. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, we're going to Ruby Tuesdays. He's like, I can't eat that. I gotta, like, I'm eating my chicken. He had like literally like 3 chicken breasts and like lettuce, like with nothing on it. Like, I think you could put like mustard or something. So for those, again, I mean, maybe there's people out there that have gone down this road, and where I'm going with this is the discipline, right? Like, to get to that level. And just like with running a marathon, right? And I know we were joking before, like, you walk, you run, but still, you got to put in those training runs. But like bodybuilding, to get to that level where you're competing at shows and you're doing all that, like the discipline and the discipline and the routines that you have to put into place to get your body to that level is really wild. And I've always respected it. Something that, we do a lot. I call the term endurance, like all the running, the CrossFit. And I used to see it in the CrossFit community when we were super and like we got an opportunity to meet, some of the CrossFit champions, but like you see their daily routines, man. And when you compete at that high level, and I've met people that compete at a high level, whether marathons, basketball, all these sports, like the routines and the discipline that those people have is insane. It's so intense. But for you, like, so you go down this road of fitness, like at a very high level that not many people get to, Sam. Let's be honest, both from running and also because, like, if you think about running, like this is, people like, I know we were kind of like joking here a little bit, like, just like being soft about it, but like less than 2% of the world population has completed a marathon. Less than 0.5% in the United States population have completed a marathon when you break it down even further. So to achieve what you've achieved, you've had to put in these routines, have the discipline to do these things. Now, this happens, fitness changes a bit, right? Like, it's not like you're going to the gym and putting up 225 or whatever your routine was. You have some of these setbacks. And I know you sent me the picture, a couple of weeks back. You're back in the gym, like lifting. You had some decent weight. Not that, and as I've gotten older, like it's not like we don't go to the gym to lift like the 120-pound dumbbells. Right. It's just about reps and just staying active, right? It's not so much about the weight, but again, routine, discipline. So let's talk about fitness and how that's evolved. Because I think that fitness is very personal, right? Like your fitness is different than my fitness or someone else's fitness that may be watching. But the fact that you're actually, like you said, you're getting to the gym 4 or 5 times a week, that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So much of this comes from Marie, from my wife. I had to lift for sports, and then I got into running. And then Marie was a personal trainer. And she got very involved and said, you know what? I want to do a fitness show. And back in 2005, she did her first fitness show. And I was watching what she had to do. And then I was in the audience on the day of the show, obviously. And I looked at all these other guys and I'm like, man, they are huge. As I'm in the audience looking at the stage. And then I go backstage and I'm like, are these the same guys that were up on stage? They're smaller than me. Like, what's happening here? So I said, hey, you know what? Just for fun, I want to try this. So Marie is really the detail person in our house, not only with my medical situation now, but nutrition, training regimens, all of those things. And so I said, you know what? I think I want to do this. And so I did that. And as much as running helped me with my mind, distance running on accomplishing large goals, the fitness training is a baseline for me. Like, I always know if I'm gaining too much weight or not enough weight, and what I need to eat, and what the correct balance is. You know, I used to do it all on a spreadsheet, and every meal, I knew exactly the amount of protein, carbs, and fat I would take in. I mean, I was to the T. But what that did to me is, over time, it just became ingrained in my head. So an example of that is, my kids will tell you this too. I refuse to eat a meal if it doesn't have carbs and protein in it. Like, you won't catch me just eating pancakes. I won't deny myself of pancakes, but I will make sure I have a protein shake with it. Like, you know, everything balanced. So yeah, that stuff and that discipline. Sometimes I think that God was looking out for me when I didn't know he was looking out for me. And he taught me all of these things. Like, why was I running? Why was I lifting? Why was I on nutrition and fitness? Maybe because he was going to throw something at me later in life that I needed to draw on to keep me alive. And so, yeah, those things all played a really big role in it. And just for reference, those were local shows. Clearly, I'm not a giant. And in some cases, and they were all natural, by the way. In some cases, I say natural bodybuilding should be called body destruction.
Yeah.
Because really, to show all your muscle, you got to shred down to nothing.
Correct.
And so it's a very different thing than what you see on TV when it's natural.
Correct. And it's yes, but I take away the discipline that it takes, just like, you know, to compete at that level, even if it's a local show.
I will say this,
put in the effort.
I will say this though. Again, I hope this doesn't come across cocky, but my one claim to fame is this. As far as local, I decided to branch out, and this was, I don't know, 2007 or 8. This is sort of a funny story. And I entered something called the Monster Mash in Boston, and I was going to go crush a big natural show. And I went. There were 15 competitors in my weight class. I came in 7th place, and that was on a Saturday. And my buddy, and New York City Marathon was the next day on Sunday. And if you know anything about bodybuilding, you deplete yourself of carbs, all the things that you need for running. So I had already signed up for the marathon. So Marie and I drove, we do the show. I'm all tanned, fake tan. And so they go, so now I got to get in my car. The show ends at 9:00 at night. I got to drive to New York City for the start. And on the way in the car, I'm carbing up. I'm eating everything. And so at the time I was doing fundraising for Livestrong. So I'm all in black. Did I ever tell you this story? No. I'm all in black and yellow. I'm shredded and I'm tan and I got a baseball hat on. Okay. So my buddies, I said, what would be impressive? My trainer, I said, like, what, after a bodybuilding show, run New York, what time do you think he goes, you'll never come in under 4 hours. I said, oh, okay, let me see. So I go, now we're running. I start the race. We're running. It's the same year Lance Armstrong runs his first marathon. Kid you not. So I'm decked out. And as I'm running, and I'm looking pretty good.
People think you're Lance.
People are jumping out of the crowd. And I'm going, come on. So I'm just running, blah, blah, blah. Now I get to the finish line, and my wife, by the way, I finished in 3 hours and 51 minutes. And my wife gets me at the finish line, and I said, honey, you're never going to believe this. And the great part about Marie is she just pounds me down when I'm out of reality.
Keeps you humble. She keeps you humble.
Right. And she says, I say, all these people thought I was Lance Armstrong. She goes, okay, calm it down, will you? I said, okay, fine. You don't believe me? That's okay. So what I love to do after a marathon is go into a pub, particularly an Irish pub, and have beers and a burger and everything I couldn't eat before.
Yeah.
So we find near the finish line a local pub. I walk in. The place goes quiet. Dead quiet.
Thinking you're Lance Armstrong.
People are like, Lance. I'm like, I look to my wife. I go,
see,
I wasn't kidding. So true story. I'm certainly not at the caliber of Lance Armstrong, but I had a lot of fun with it. And I will admit, I signed some autographs along.
I love it. So you just spilled the beans. So those poor people, Sam. So if you were at the 2007 New York City Marathon and
that was the year. Right.
If you thought you got Lance Armstrong's autograph, you may not have. Let's just put it out there. And hopefully you sold that before all the stuff came out, because not only did that diminish the autograph, but also you may not have his autograph. You may have Sam Constantino signing his Lance Armstrong. Oh my God, that's a great story.
True factual, true story.
I love it. Oh my God, that's a great story. So I got 2 questions left here for you. I got to compose myself because that is a freaking great story. Something that you mentioned a couple of times here, and where I'm going to go with this is like mindset. And we've talked a lot about mindset, your work with Dr. Joe, meditation. And I always often say like words, the way we use certain words can be so powerful, right? If you ever see any of these like great motivational speakers, they use these great like power phrases. I think it's very fascinating, not to bring up politics, but if you look at our politicians today, they are very, and regardless of what you think or, whether you're on the right or the left and in the middle, but if you ever watch the really good ones, they are very, very, very conscious of the words they use. Very conscious, right? Even celebrities for that matter, right? Like, and I've done enough speaking where, there's certain power phrases, there's certain words you use. But so you mentioned, and where I'm going with this, something, but then, in thinking about this whole conversation, not the whole, but a lot of this, we've been talking about mindset, right? And how we think about certain things and how powerful that is. You mentioned early on, like, yeah, this cancer could have been in you. And this is, we're not making this stuff up. I mean, I think there's science out there, like, and even the scientists don't know, right? Like these cancers could be brewing for, some people say up to 10 years, right? If we look at screening and surveillance, like if you have a family history, regardless of whether you have any genetics, like if if you have a parent that had the cancer at like, say 60, they say you should start really like at age 50, start doing like high level screening. And what we mean by that is just, whether that's blood, whether that's diagnostics, get into like these high risk programs. You mentioned like this cancer could have been in there like 7 years ago and you were living life, man. You were working out, you were running, but you didn't know about it.
Right.
So I guess this is a loaded question here. As I said, I ask a lot of them. Have you ever thought in the last 2 years, like, wow, man, like if that's true, and if science is what it is, and you just said like some scientists, and no one has a definitive on this, say that it could be 10 years before, but like, Sam, look at the things you were doing 8 years ago, like the activity that you were doing, work, life, everything. Like you were plugging along, you were full steam ahead, like you were like that Ferrari going down the Autobahn, but you had no idea. And then now you have the idea, like you have this diagnosis now, it's present, it's causing some issues and everything changes. But like what's what's really changed, right? Like 8 years ago, like that mind, right? Like, so have you ever thought about that? I guess is my question here. Like thinking, knowing what we know, and we don't have a definitive, and I know this is kind of a loaded question. It's a little bit ambiguous in sense, like, because we don't know what was there 8 years ago. But if we look at science and the data, like, yeah, things do change, but like you had it, but you didn't know. And I guess my question here is like that mind shift. But I think you, and maybe I'm trying not to speak here, and I'm going to stop talking here. Like your mind has shifted back to where you were 8 years ago.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And the power of that, right? Like that's like super freaking powerful.
Yeah, I mean, that you would ask me to be a part of some of these survivor calls, and I was hesitant in year one. And then I really wrapped my head around the concept that you just brought up, which is I truly believe that I've had cancer in my body for 5 to 10 years. I don't know. And I didn't know then. And I didn't let it affect my life. And so now I'm a 21-month survivor, but I would argue that I'm a 10-year and 21-month survivor. And so if I didn't let it impact me then, and I wasn't doing anything about it, why would I let it impact me now? And now I'm actually tending to it, and we're trying to take care of it, and I think we're doing a pretty good job of it. So if you start to think in those positive ways, then you can really continue to move forward. And you're talking about a mantra or the things that people say. The thing right now is let's go, let's go, let's go. And personally, I hate that. I think that people need to come up with a more original thing than let's go. But it seems to be working and motivating people. For me, it's not let's go, because I feel like I'm always going. I don't need anybody to tell me to go. What I like to say is keep moving forward. Because even before this diagnosis, I always had a belief in life that you're either going this way or you're going this way. And the moment you stop going this way, going forward, you have the potential to start going this way. And so keep moving forward, to me, is the mantra that I live by. And that's what I tell myself. And that might mean by praying more, by having more gratitude, by having more love, by putting grudges and horrible thoughts you have in your mind about people, places, or things. Get rid of it. Move forward. Bring as much love into your life as you possibly can. That's what I try to do every day.
So powerful. I'm a growth mindset guy, man. And so you just said it like, right. I mean, if you're not growing, how do I say this and not sound like a total jerk, right? Because some people just don't get that, and that's okay. But like, if you're not growing and moving forward, then like you're going backwards, right? And regardless of your situation and what you're in, I mean, let's preface this, like growing doesn't have to be like running a marathon. It could just be like, hey, today I'm just going to get up and I'm going to get the mail out of my mailbox, right? Or I'm going to have this attitude that, I'm going to get through today without like feeling sorry for myself. Or, I'm just going to continue this positive attitude or this positive space that I'm in, and it's not always, climbing or growing that way is not always linear, even in that direction, right? Like sometimes there's plateaus and then you got to readjust. But that's life, man, right? Like in anything that you do in life, like it's, I don't know, even people, like people say, well, people were born into money. Well, they're not always going like this, right? Like that's just regardless, but this is living, and this is a testament to it, man. You're in there.
Well, my dad worked as a consultant and just until he passed, until he was 83. And he taught me something that I keep with me all the time, which is, and I think it's the reason he kept working. The day you stop learning something every day, like, is the day you should give up.
Yeah.
Like I want to learn and grow and move forward every single day. I'm not, no matter my success level, no matter my experience, there is something to learn in this life every day.
Powerful. Sam, I got two questions left. I know we've talked a lot about some things here. Just this, I use this term golden nuggets. You just gave out a bunch of golden nuggets, but this second to last question here is advice. Someone listening, watching on the other side, maybe they just got the same diagnosis the other day, today, or maybe tomorrow. What advice would you give them? I know we've talked about a lot of great things. So I would say listen to this entire podcast. But if we could sum it up here in a couple of things, what would that be?
That more people are dealing with scenarios like mine, whether it be pancreatic cancer or any type of illness, than you realize. A lot of people keep it quiet. And I've gone the opposite direction. I have a Facebook page about it. I'm very open about the situation. And when I'm able to do that, it's very therapeutic because I'm able to release the emotions and the feelings that I have about my situation. And then, as my daughter, who's an English major, doesn't like, I created this little motto from Life is Good that I say, laugh is good. And that's not correct English. However, laugh a lot along the way. If you can't laugh and make fun of yourself and I remember rolling around on the floor when I swelled up as a Pillsbury Doughboy. And my kids, and we're cracking up. We're like, this is horrible, but look at Dad. You gotta laugh. What else? You get two choices. You can really be depressed and cry about this thing, or you can keep moving forward and laugh as much as possible. So that's what I would tell you. And love a lot, because it really makes you happy.
I love it. Perfect. Perfectly said. Last question here. Then we're going to share for our audience, if people want to connect with you, where they can do that. This is the loaded question of loaded questions. If you've listened to the podcast, you know this one's coming. How do you define the word pancreatic cancer, given your experience and what you've gone through in the last almost 2 years? What's your definition of it?
If anybody that was ever involved in any type of fraternal organization that had to go through a hell week would tell you that it was the worst thing. Let me rephrase that. It's the best thing that I never want to do again, because I learned so much from the process of my fraternity and my hell week. And my closest friends are a lot of them are those guys. Now, if I put that onto pancreatic cancer, I will tell you, it's the worst. It's the worst thing that's happened to me, but the best things have come out of it. I have had more great experiences in the last 21 months than I probably had the previous part of my life. And so you take out the gems and you figure out a way, as cliche as it sounds, to turn lemons into lemonade. And it hasn't been all bad. It's certainly nothing I'd wish upon anybody. Like, hey, see if you can get this. But it's a challenge. But life is a challenge. It's just another one. And I think we're getting pretty close to finding a cure, getting better at this, learning more as a result of what you're doing. And I'm very positive about that. I liken it to, being on the Titanic, and then it went down. It was a great ship, and then it went down. And there's some people that were floating around out there. And I feel like I'm just floating around right now, just waiting for my survival ship, waiting for my rescue ship, my rescue boat to come and get me. And I'm going to keep paddling, keep treading water until we find a cure.
So powerful, Sam. I mean, like I said, this has been, there's been so many golden nuggets, and I just want to thank you, one, for allowing Project Purple the opportunity to be part of your life at this point in time. I wish we had met sooner, because would have liked to make fun of you when you were doing your bodybuilding contest. But that's another podcast, another day.
Well, there's another thing that came out of this. I even though we've only known each other for a short period of time, I feel very close to you. I feel like we're very good friends.
We text, full disclosure, we text often. We're texting buddies. I'm not on social as much anymore, so I don't see many of the updates, but we text often. And all sorts of times of the week and day. It's
sometimes even pictures of our biceps.
Correct.
But there's a perfect example. Does that happen if I don't get pancreatic cancer? Nope.
No. I think I've mentioned this. I know I've mentioned it to people, and I don't know if I said it on the podcast. And there's days where I'd give it all back to have my dad. But there's days when I am truly blessed to meet the people and have the people in my life that are in my life, you being one of them. So today is a blessed day, man, because of that. And it's truly been an honor to have you on the podcast. I know this has been a long time coming. Your story is truly an inspiration, Sam. You are one of the main drivers here for our endurance team, whether you know it or not, in terms of inspiration and what we continue to do. And you are, for me, a personal inspiration. This job's not easy. No job's easy, right? Like, let's be honest. But I did say before, like, I do believe I have the best job in the world. But one of the other reasons is that we're pushing to find a cure, right? And you're an inspiration for me personally, and someone that's impacted my life over the last 2 years of how I've been able to see you live your life, not only as a person, but I've never said this to you, Sam, but, as a dad, and being a dad myself, and how you are with your family. As I mentioned, that moment we had in New York with you, man, just really, really hit home. And I mentioned something before, man, you get me emotional. Damn. Losing my dad, my kids were 4 and 5. So I've had to raise my 2 boys, and there's been people that have come in and out of my life for a reason through Project Purple, that have been dads, and really, really great dads. And you're one of them that I've been able to learn a lot from as a young dad, and trying to navigate fatherhood. When you don't have a dad, when you become a dad, that really becomes a challenge. So I'll leave it at that. I'm going to stop talking. We're going to share where people can connect with you. With that,
let me just tack on to that, Dino, it was very nice of you to say that. And one of the realizations I've had through this process is that you can take every trophy, every medal, every accolade that I've ever received and throw it in the garbage can. My biggest accomplishment is my 4 children and my wife. Those are my medals, my badges. And I think that's why I was put on this earth, to be a dad. So I really appreciate you recognizing that. I don't think I'm perfect, certainly.
I didn't say you're perfect.
I heard it. Maybe,
but you're close to it. You're close to it, Sam.
No, nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. And I'm certain that they think I've messed up a lot along the way. But thank you for saying that. You're a great man.
Thank you. Thank you. So for our audience, if someone out there wants to, I know you mentioned social media a little bit. What's the best place for people to reach out to you? Maybe there's someone that, just got diagnosed, like we said, and just finds your story inspiring and wants to talk to you about your journey and your story a little bit further. Where would they do that, Sam?
Yeah, you can reach me. I'll give you three areas. Email at samcon, SAMCON 8789 at Gmail. You can also text me at 315-864-1160. And then I have a Facebook page under my name. That's my own Facebook. But then my sister put together a page called Sam Strong, which now has about 545 members. And it's an incredibly inspirational page there where we share a lot of information, but more about positivity than anywhere else. And that's called Sam Strong. And you can find it, and my sister will welcome you in as the administrator.
I love it. I love it. Sam, thank you. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to have you on as a guest. And thank you for all you've done for the Project Purple community and personally for me over the last 2 years. It's been an honor.
I would be remiss in not mentioning your staff. As great as you are, you're great enough to bring on incredible staff. Everybody that we've interacted with has been second to none. And I will continue to support Project Purple for all of my days.
Thank you. As you know, no one does it alone, man. And kudos to the team here. They are wonderful at what they do. And again, as I said earlier, we're blessed to have this opportunity to interact with families like yours, which are truly amazing. We're just along for the ride, man. And we're pushing because of people like you and families like yours and friends that support all your endeavors. So thank you guys for all the support. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Project Purple podcast. If you like this episode, feel free to share this episode and make sure you follow the Project Purple podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. That's a wrap of another episode of the Project Purple podcast. Till next time, please be safe and thanks for listening.